tell you things are bad? Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work, or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe. Our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Peace. Welcome back. Welcome, everybody. Shout out to the chat and the mods. Gonna get into it here. Yours truly on the Wake Up Show. Yes. Today we're going to be continuing this talk, covering the Grammys. Not necessarily the Grammys, because I don't really care about the Grammys, the awards, and all of this stuff. It's more about the messaging, right? The symbolism, and really the cultural expressions that these types of major events present to the public. The culture expressions that create culture. It is my belief that all of these different types of expressions and events, etc., are aspects of culture creation. This has a lot to do with the celebrities. This has a lot to do with Hollywood. This has a lot to do with the music industry that is obviously, especially at the top, when we talk about mainstream and all of this stuff, controlled by Satan. This isn't to say, and I want to make this clear, I'm not demonizing music. I'm not demonizing art, of course not. I love music, I love art. But when we get to these levels of quote unquote so-called success, that's when things get demonic, it appears. And scripture teaches us this as well. So now today, I'm just playing with some terms. This idea of children of the corn, right, as a code word for adult entertainment, and this idea of the pornification of society. And the reason I came up with that is because first I'm playing on the old horror film, Stephen King, originally a book, but adapted into a horror film, Stephen King's Children of the Corn. And in this book and film, the children of the corn were these young, it was a young fundamentalist cult, a murderous cult that were guided by a leader, a type of cult leader with beneath him was a group of henchmen, and they controlled a certain population of young children, and they had this pact under this so-called god or demon that told them to kill their parents. And so they got together and they all murdered their parents, and then they started to run this small-scale cult that controlled the city they lived in. And it's a scary film, a fascinating film at the same time, considering its description of cults and how they work. But more interestingly, they were children that made it that it made it much more disturbing, right? Seeing this type of depiction. So for me, I was playing on this idea of course, with the this code word of corn that we all use on the internet now instead of saying the actual term in reference to adult entertainment, but also this idea of children being spiritually corrupted, being in a sense initiated into a type of cult, right? So when we think of these artists that they've shown us, especially the uh, the Chappelle Roans and the Charlie XCX and all, even the Swifties, that's a cult. Okay, the Swifties is a cult in my view. It's maybe a soft core cult, if you will. Malachi, there we go. Malachi was the guy under the leader, right? Or is Malachi the leader? I think Malachi was like the head henchman, right? I think it's been a while. A very creepy film. Mm. Daryl, good one. Yes, Village of the Damned, another really interesting child cult like film that I think is actually pretty cool. I enjoyed that film. It's not as nowhere near as disturbing. It's much more cool and interesting than Children of the Corn. Children of the Corn is just kind of creepy and scary and disturbing. But Children of the Damned is just like, damn, that's a wild movie. Those little kids are something else, man. Haven't seen that in a while. If you look up here as we ride through LA, you can see to the top left, and what do you see? Of course, witchery, right? This constant inundation of witchcraft and the season of the witch, constantly alluding to magic, right? I believe that character on the right is some type of magician or something, and I could be wrong, but from what I'm gathering, that is some type of magic film, and this isn't anything new. Okay, let's not act like we're remaking the wheel. This stuff goes all the way back to Fantasia. We all watched it when we were young. I'd say that was one of the introductory types of witchcraft magic films. Disney and all of that, and it goes even before that. But what we're seeing now, Isaac. There we go. Isaac was the leader. Yes, Isaac was the little guy. Really creepy little dude too. Man, yeah, that creepy little voice, and man, that is a perfect cast. I mean, that cast was flawless, man. Whoever casted that film knew exactly what they were doing because they sure did meet the mark there. Isaac was the leader of the cult, and Malachi was like the head hitman. Yeah, and then interestingly, they all turned on Isaac at that one point in the film. I guess that was kind of the yeah, that was the height of the film. I think that's when things started getting real strange and creepy. Lost Boys, excellent vampire film. Scary, you know, uh, legitimately scary, especially for young people. But well done, well done, and not too grotesque. Very cleverly done. Anyhow, let's not get into the movie talk, guys, because we'll be here forever talking about fun movies we used to watch throughout the years of our lives. But anyhow, yeah. Oh, I forgot to show you that guys this yesterday. This is kind of interesting here, right? Before we dive in, I just want to show you this quickly to get it out the way. So it looks like I don't know exactly when this award session was, but it's interesting how they've traded off. Their hair is it's like they switched hair. They both got on the red dresses. I don't know, man. These two figures are huge. I really think that whole Kanye, what was that, 2008, 2009? I really think that whole Kanye thing when he got up on the stage, that was some kind of event. He was put up to do that because a lot of things changed in the music industry after that. I think it was setting the tone for something similar to what we saw with Kendrick Lamar in 2016 when he did that Grammys performance. I don't know. I just find these two and their dynamics very, very interesting. The black white chessboard, Lady in Red concept, Scarlet Woman, and how they're pretty much the two biggest pop artists, right? I don't know about Beyonce anymore. There's a lot of new artists that have come up. Maybe she's, yeah, High Priestess, I would say, yeah. Maybe she's not as big as she used to be, but these two have been very, very influential. Now, let's see. Back to this idea of children of the corn and how young children aren't only being inundated by the spiritual witchcraft, wizardry, occult, esoteric stuff, but they're also being introduced to um, highly, highly sexualized themes. And I'm going as far as saying pornification because these women they're presenting us, I mean, it's pretty extreme. It is what we're looking at now, with the sexy reds and all of these new artists who wasn't even anywhere to be seen, by the way. And again, I didn't watch it. Maybe she was in the crowd and they showed her at some point. I didn't see any sexy red, which was interesting. Is she done? Is her career over? I mean, last I saw her, she's trying to get on these little streamer shows and stuff, which usually says your career is ending. But I guess that's a good thing. But then these other girls aren't any better, right? They're not any better. They're all the same. They're all pushing the same message. So I say what we're looking at, a bunch of strippers. They just look like strippers, really, and prostitutes or adult entertainers, right? That's all they look like to me. So today I really want to get into just some of the concepts and the arguments against some of this stuff. But before we do that, let's look at some clips. Let's go back. Got a few clips here to just go through. I want to first show this clip here. Everyone's flipping out about this. This more so relates to episode 13, where we were talking about music and this disconnect between the generations. I just thought this was an interesting clip here. How the younger generations are so disconnected from the history of music and the foundations of it, where it comes from, etc. So everyone's flipping out about this interview here. So this is Babyface. Okay, Babyface is probably one of the biggest names in R&B. And again, I'm not propping this guy up. I understand all these guys are part of the machine, but he is, he definitely is a pioneer. He's someone to be respected in that sense, as far as his track record and everything that he's done in the industry. A lot of people in the industry wouldn't exist if it wasn't for his influence and his music. A lot of great music people love wouldn't exist if it weren't for him. Yeah, yesterday's did get pulled for a certain clip, but thankfully I was able to trim it out quickly and I got it back up. But yeah, they're on it, man. They got these AIs now. They're not letting me get away with anything. So we do what we can, but I gotta show the clips. It's part of the show. It just it's needed. It sucked to just play the audio. But anyhow, so they're interviewing Babyface, and this little demon here, this little witch over here, Roan, she's just walking by, and they're interviewing Babyface. Okay, Babyface, like this guy is, I guess if there is a such thing as, I guess industry monarchy or what have you, or royalty, he would definitely be up there on one of the top seats. Okay. Now look at how they do this, dude. Okay, so she's doing some weird, cringy, I don't know what the heck she's doing right here, but she just saw Roan, and this is her reaction. This is how people react to these new artists. And again, I'm not trying to prop this guy up. Yes, he's clearly an icon, but I'm just being objective here. Objectively, this dude is like a Michael Jackson in his field, okay? And she's wigging out over this Sally Come Lately artist that been around for literally a couple of years. So to the industry and to the mainstream that understand music, this is highly disrespectful, okay? he's like wow, you just want to interview her. I'm gonna just get out the way. And look, they just look at them, look at how they're looking at her, and they just shoo him away. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry, baby. It's Babyface. It's yay. I'm playing around. I'm not trying to take this serious at all. But it is a big deal though. If we're just going to be objective, like this is a slap in the face, man. Oh, you can't even hear this. Okay, let me run this back. Darn it, I had it muted. Sorry.
Yes, I think it's interesting.
Chapel, Chapel.
You guys want to do that? Go do that.
So sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Hello.
Wow. He just, what do they call that? What is curved? Did he just get curved there? Yeah, I mean, come on, it is what it is. But people are making a big stink about this that I find interesting. And coming from the era, the babyface era, growing up during the babyface era, I understand why a lot of people are saying that. And I think really what it is, it's a generational thing, and that's why I'm showing this. This is a great example of this generational disconnect. This fits perfect with at least our recent topic, right? Snubbery. There we go. That's a good one. Yes, so unprofessional. Yes, right? This is the perfect example in a musical sense of this disconnect where these young people have no idea the significance of this man as far as music is concerned. And he literally is just pushed out of the way for this little young virtual avatar, right? Now it was a pretty big deal, guys, because guess what? She straight up, someone must have whispered something in her ear, because this happened shortly thereafter.
Kicking us off, but we want to thank you. But first I wanted to say that I'm really sorry about interrupting Babyface earlier. Chapel Roan had come up and there was a lot of commotion as there is on these carpets, but I'm a big Babyface fan, and as are we all, and so I just wanted to say that I really apologize. But thank you so much for having me, you guys. It's been great.
Apparently she got fired after this. Yeah, apparently she straight up got fired. And technically, I don't mean to be messy, but technically I think, yeah, you probably should be fired for that. If this is your job and you're playing into the rules, the hierarchy is, you just disrespected the hierarchy right there. You just disrespected the hierarchy there. I think you should not be doing this anymore. I'm sorry. I'm old school, and that's how I'm coming. So, bye. Anyways, I'm just playing. We just having a little fun before we get into this. So, yeah, she should be. Darn it. You know who that is? Okay. Yeah, she has no idea. She's talking about, oh, we're all Babyface fans. Like, okay, sure. All right, so let's go here. Now, this was a very, and they always tend to be to some degree, but this year was hypersexualized. I noticed with this show, first off, I think it was this type of clap back, as the young folks say today. It was a type of clap back at the conservative right. This was it was a political, I think it was a political message, because this Grammys was literally a queer event, if I can borrow that term. It was really a queer event. It was presenting a certain community. And honestly, I'm a bit offended. Okay. Now, I'm offended because I thought everything was about equality, right? I thought the big message over the years was inclusivity and representation. So personally, I'm a little offended by this year's Grammys because I don't feel represented. I personally am a bit hurt. I do not feel like I was included. My beliefs were not part of this at all. I mean, literally every artist, for the most part, that was up there was part of this community. And this was like a community event. And I'm a bit offended. I was not represented at all. and that's not cool. You know, what is going on here? We definitely ain't playing that. But yeah, we got another one of these space witches, you know, and Missandris Janelle Monáe. I mean, she's talented, you know, but a lot of them are talented. We're at the point now where your talent don't matter no more because all of you guys are destroying the society. Willie Eyelash, that's funny. So yeah, I feel a bit offended. I wasn't represented. I do not feel like I was included here, nor any of my people. Where was the diversity? There was no diversity in this event. How did this even happen, right? So again, none of this stuff makes sense. So I feel like it was one of these types of events. Now let's go back here. You know, if you're talking about inclusivity and all this fair talk, equality and stuff, this was an alienating show to watch. It was harmful to my eyes and my emotions. I didn't see any Christian sentiment. You know, I didn't see any heterosexuality. You know, I felt a little hurt there. Now, this is the Billie Eyelash. Now, she has this hardcore tomboy look. And again, I'm not demonizing tomboy look. There's nothing wrong with a little tomboy look. It can be cool and fashionable and comfortable for certain individuals that tend to just, you know, have that style. It is a thing, and that's fine. That's not the issue. The issue is how she also sexualizes herself. Let me show you something. In perfect timing, right after this, she's now dropping a perfume called Your Turn, which, I'm sorry, this just has sexualization all over it. The way she's sitting, what she's wearing, her positioning, the look. It's just dirty and it's nasty. And rolling the dice, looks like it's a dice bottle. And it's called Your Turn. I don't know, man. All of this stuff is just hyper-sexualized, man. And she just looks real nasty. And I know what they're signaling here. Got the torn leggings. This is signaling things that young people don't need to be. It's gross. It is. Get her off the screen. So, you know, when I see her doing this whole thing, and I understand you can change up styles. I get that. You could do a little tomboy one day and dress it up the next and be a little femme. I understand the whole thing. But that's not what's happening here. I think these people are being used to social engineer young girls. Because guys don't listen to this. Well, some do, but they tend to be of a different persuasion. So this whole thing to me just right away, I'm like, what's up with all this sexual stuff? And then here's this, another one of these demons. Extra trashy. Well said. Extra trashy. Now, speaking of trashy, this one here, I mean, goodness, she's actually legitimately scary if you look at any of her videos. And we've covered her in the past. I've used clips of her stuff in my breakdowns. I think I actually used a couple clips of her in the They Want Us to Be Weird video from 2016. So she's been in the game for a minute, Charlie XCX. She's all about the gender-bending, alien, transhumanist kind of aesthetics. And again, and here she is, similar to Kanye and his concubine, wearing these big old feathery jackets with some damn underwear underneath. And it's, I'm not even gonna play this because I don't like the way it looks, but so I'm showing you all the like big hitters. All the big hitters that night. Mind you, they're all of this community. And listen, do what you want to do. I'm not going to tell people what to do. I have my own beliefs. I don't want to stop you from expressing yourself and living your best life and living your truth. This is the world. I accept that. But my thing is don't push that crap on me. Just like you don't want me to push my faith or religion on you. I don't push my faith or religion on anybody. I'm going to represent myself. I'm going to stand on my belief, of course, but I'm not pushing it on anyone. Don't push it on me. You don't see us blasting church music and hymns and, scriptures in your face on any of these events. We don't turn it into a church service. Why do we have to see a damn gay parade? Because that's what the show was. That's what it was. It's not right. It's wrong. You're just... Okay, that was way too loud. Let me turn this. Look at this video. Look at this woman. This is an example of what I mean. This is just a good example of what we saw last night. What do you see? I don't see any men. I see nothing but women, all part of the same community, looking like a bunch of witches, black on black. That's all a cult. That's what that's alluding to, a cult. And look who hop out the whip. Yeah. I can't remember her damn name, but she's one of these indie actresses. I remember her from Kids, one of the first social engineering films that messed me up, man. I watched that damn thing too young. All of that. Yeah, and look at her. Right there with it. Boy girls, yeah. It's, Anyhow, so she won a Grammy. Why all these girls getting Grammys out of nowhere? They got cult followings. People don't even know these artists, man. Generally speaking, people don't know these artists. They really don't. Why are they all getting so much attention and publicity? I think it's because it's this part of the agitprop, right? Part of the agitprop, making it seem like, we're taking a shot at Trump. We're taking a shot at the Republicans. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of our favorite gays up on stage, half naked. So all of our children that are next to us watching this crap can be inundated with this nonsense. And here she is on this damn stage, looking like a cult party, dancing in her damn underwear, humping the stage, and nothing but I don't even know what that thing was standing there if you saw it. But yeah, this is nothing but a Dionysian cult worship scenario. Yeah, it's all planted. That's how I look at it. All of this is set up. This is a big agitation propaganda event, but it's also about, I believe, it's about corrupting the spirit and morality of young people. It's a pornification. It's, just like I showed you that picture of that young boy who was, taking a quick look at Kanye's his concubine. He was looking. He's young. Listen, that boy probably ain't never seen a woman walking around in public butt naked like that. That's trauma. That's a type of trauma. I personally believe that's a type of trauma. Yeah, Days of Lot, exactly. It's disgusting. And I think that's what a lot of these events do. They expose young children to things far too soon. Now, there's this guy. It's not just women. This dude, Benson Boone. I never heard of this dude. I don't know who he is, but he's looking like, what is his name? Dirk Diggler. Looking like Dirk Diggler. And they pulling his clothes off and stuff, half naked. It's almost see-through. This is by design. And just the whole idea of tearing his clothes off, that's sexual. What is this? You see, you guys get it? It's subtle. Rituals, definitely rituals. It's subtle. But I know what this is signaling, and any adult knows as well. Okay, any adult knows exactly what this stuff is signaling. We're all adults. We're all grown. We know what this is. I'm just going to get through these clips, and then we're going to start breaking this stuff down. Flesh worship. There we go, Valar. Good to see you, by the way, sis. And this clip here, someone says, being this gay on television is so beautiful. So there you go. They're straight up saying it. Being this gay on television is so beautiful. Look at this. This is hypersexuality. What else is that? Crawling like that. What else is this? And I know this ain't nothing new. People been doing this stuff on stage, but I'm saying, mix in all of the hypersexuality and the homosexuality and everything else involved. Is this what we need to be seeing? Is this what our young children need to be exposed to? And then she come out here talking like this. This is when I just almost dropped my glass of water. Okay, when she started talking like this.
Brutal right now, but trans people have always existed and they will forever exist, and they will never, no matter what happens, take trans joy away, and that has to be protected more than anything, because
more than anything? That has to be protected more than anything? Do you hear the extremes? This like extreme view, like that's what's most important, guys. That's our biggest issues in the world right now that we should be considering. And what does that even mean, protecting? Like, I don't know.
I would not be here without trans girls. So
See? You see that? You wouldn't, huh?
just know that pop music is thinking about you and
How can you speak for pop music? They're just so narcissistic, and that's what I have to say this, and I know it's very controversial. A big part of these types of, let's say, communities are controlled by, as Valar said, flesh worship. That can be put in secular terms as narcissism. These people are highly narcissistic, where they believe the world revolves around them and their emotional needs and their political battles. They truly believe this. Their political battles are all that really matter. All the issues in the world, guys, all the problems that people got going on day to day, transracial, transcultural, we all got stuff we're dealing with. These are what we need. These are the issues we need to be working with.
so just know that pop music is thinking about you and cares about you. And I'm trying my best to like really stand up for you in brutal.
Ugh, bigger fish, man. Much bigger fish. I'm sorry. This is not, no. Much bigger fish to fry. Okay, now, now let me get into my notes here. Start breaking some of this stuff down. So flesh-based sexual programming, we've looked at this. As you notice, almost everybody that performed was in a damn underwear. Except for the polar opposite, black and white thinking, hot, cold, MK Ultra style programming, right? Of course, Season of the Witch, Pornification. Now, I believe, so first off, let's just think about this idea of morality, right? What's moral? What's right? What should be accepted in a society, in a culture? First, I think what we're seeing is abusive. I truly believe that. I believe what we're being shown is abusive to children. Showing children sexual images, symbols, and presenting sexual concepts to them, or should I say, presenting them with emotionally mature concepts that are too mature for their level of maturity, that is abuse. I personally believe. So saying that, my point is everything we're seeing coming from this community is abusive to children. Now, what I've realized over the years studying postmodernism is, in fact, they don't believe in these types of binaries, if you will. Say the binary between adult content and, say, childhood. Right? In their view, it's good to expose a child early to these things. And in fact, the earlier the better. And this is why it leads to certain education systems, certain classrooms teaching children about pleasuring themselves as young as, I think, maybe 8 or 9. I've seen some of these books, man. It is highly disturbing. But again, what we're going to talk about here is worldview and how you ground a moral view, and I would argue how you sustain a healthy society. A healthy society cannot be sustained without some type of objective moral. Now, some people are going to be alienated by that. Some people are going to be turned off by that fact, especially if you want to live your life a certain way. But that's just the way societies work, and postmodernism has attempted to deconstruct that. And here we are with all of the social and cultural problems that we have because of that deconstruction. Fragmenting the young minds, absolutely. So I look at it this way. I can't remember. There's been several philosophers who have mentioned this, but I agree with this. And it aligns with scripture as well, in that a good way to go about sustaining a healthy society and protecting a society is by protecting women and children, not trans people. Okay. We need to protect women and children and mothers, especially. Right. Now, what we see is the opposite of that. We see a culture that tells women not to be mothers. And we see a culture that says, being a mother is slavery. That being a mother is something no one should ever want to do or aspire to do. There's even arguments that saying being a mother is dangerous. Having a baby is dangerous. It's lethal. Okay. And then we see that children are being exposed to all types of things every single day. So it's obvious they don't care about children. So I look at protecting women and children has to do with posterity and preservation, right? Which is communal, group, shared. If we're going to be in a group, we have to share some type of moral objective. It can't be this postmodern, hyper-individualist, hyper-progressive world where everyone can just do what they want to do. It just doesn't work that way. Japan, as an example, very strict rules, very strict cultural boundaries and traditions that keep the society together in a way that presents order, such that there is high trust. Now, I may not personally agree with some of the spiritual values, or should we say the spiritual views or what have you, but just looking at objective cultural hierarchies and order, they're required for a healthy society. Now, when you lose these things, you start to see a lot more corruption, and you start to see a lot more, say, crime and disrespect and abuse and all of these things. And then if we look at obscenity laws, and we've done this, I will return to these at some point because they're important. We did a whole show on when we were discussing, this was Nightline 2019, we were discussing the internet, the beginning of the internet, and how the 1996 communication laws under Clinton normalized and legalized adult entertainment on the internet. And we were looking at some of the films that were coming out that exact same year. And two of those films, one was the film, was it Larry Flint, the film about the the owner of Hustler, and the other one was Boogie Nights. These two films came out the same year that the Clinton administration were mulling over and signing policy regarding adult entertainment on the internet. That's not by accident, in my view. I believe when we see certain films, when we see certain entertainment shows and events, they all tie in to the social, the political, and the cultural issues of the moment. Now, they don't always have perfect timing, but they seem to always happen around each other. And on that series we were doing, I was breaking out all the historical laws regarding obscenity laws. Like how do we judge something obscene? How do we put it into law such that there's objective rules about what, say, young kids can look at or what young kids are exposed to? And the earliest ones, I believe it was Miller. Right now, that might have been the second or third, actually. But I do remember the Miller case. It had to do with basically whatever the culture, whatever the community finds obscene would be the benchmark. And after that, it was the importance of having a healthy culture, right? Because the culture, if we're going to decide as a group what we consider obscene, then whatever the group agrees upon is very important. So from that point forward, media and certain systems of social engineering, yes, propaganda, of course, would just appeal to the culture and try to corrupt the culture. Because if you can corrupt the culture, then whatever the culture deems normal will make policy. Culture influences policy. So this is what happened with postmodernism, just slowly deconstructing culture to accept more and more degeneracy, to the point where you can't change the degeneracy anymore because the culture has accepted it. It's been changed and put in policy, and now you're stuck. And in a sense, this is kind of where we're at, as we can see with this Grammys. Like, who wants to look at this stuff? Who wants their children being influenced by sexually confused perverts? I mean, for lack of a better term. And then the sexual perversion is put under the guise of some type of justice, some type of moral crusade to protect people, whilst it's damaging people. It's really twisted. It's really, really twisted. So obscenity laws of the past are important to consider because they teach us the importance of culture. Hence culture creation, right? Because if all they got to do is inspire and corrupt the culture, well, they got the machines. Now they got the screens, hence screenagers. They got the screens, they got the algos. So society should be based on the conditions of children, in my view. I think a healthy society, culturally speaking, should be focusing on the state and condition of children as far as protecting the children, rearing them properly. Now, I want to put this clear, it's culture. I don't believe this should be a political thing, as a progressive would, or a liberal would. A liberal or a progressive would say, you know what, we need to put this into policy and have the institutions normalize this. I don't believe that should ever happen, because all it takes is a certain policy to be put into law, and then you're forced to do something that you might not agree with. I think it should be influenced by culture, personally, because I understand how corrupt the political machine is. So I'm not going to put, these types of, at least I wouldn't support putting these types of quote unquote freedoms in the hand of policy. I think it'd be better if we could do this culturally. And this is why the machine is so important, because it corrupts culture. Now, if we paid more attention to the important, and I would say a Christian culture that's based in scripture, right? So we understand how to raise a family, how to maintain a household, how to deal with hierarchies, etc. So then I guess what I'm arguing for is a type of cultural normalcy, right? Now, again, these ideas are ideal. I don't think they're even possible at this point. Only on a local scale, for sure, community scale. But society-wise, it's a wrap. We are in the days of Lot, right? We really are. Sodom and Gomorrah. So Days of Noah, all these things. So there's not a whole lot we can do at the societal level. That's obvious. But it doesn't mean that we can't do things on a smaller scale. I believe we can, especially if we start to come together as believers and those with shared values and interests. I think it's definitely possible. I experience it in my life and in my community now. So arguments for normalcy. There are limits to individualism. This is another thing. These people, they get up here, they want to talk about, this is self-expression. They want to do what they want. They want to run around half naked. They want to talk about sexual topics, and yet let children listen to their music. And this is just an example of hyper-individualism, really. Do whatever you want. That just doesn't work. There are moral parameters and foundations to a healthy society. So we have to come to some objective concept of normal. And I know to many, especially postmodernists, hyper-progressives, the idea of normal is like a blasphemous term. It's like, what do you mean normal? But that, if we're going to be honest, we have to consider that. Because in my view, freedom is basically slavery without limits. Freedom is slavery without limits. Because if you don't have limits and parameters that tell you good and bad, right from wrong, things you should and should not do, and not just based on your own flesh, your own desires, your own ego, but things that also have to do with other people, right? Because we live in a social environment. We're social creatures. So we have to always consider others and whatever our desires are, our lifestyles, and how they affect others, because we are together in that sense. So freedom without limits is slavery, because what happens is you become a slave to your freedom in a sense. Too much freedom creates addictions, creates forms of conditioning to where if you have no limits, your flesh is just going to control you. You know, if you got money, you're going to spend it on things that'll probably harm you over time. If you have too much freedom, too much pleasure, as an example, I guess what I'm getting at is hedonism goes too far. And what we saw on the Grammys and what we continue to see in this culture, this postmodern, hyper-progressive culture, that is slowly dying, thankfully. But it's still holding on, and it presented itself rather well during the Grammys. What we see with this hyper-progressive culture is this idea that hedonism is the best route to happiness, and clearly that's not the case. Now, objectivity of normalcy is required socially, right, for a healthy society. That is one of my main points. If we're going to have a healthy society, even an idea of one, there has to be some objective form of normalcy. Now, that's a whole debate. I'm not saying that I have that whole idea of normalcy written out. My view is like, we got scripture, and that's a good start. That's a good foundation. If we start from the foundation of the scriptures, we can come to some objective concept of normalcy that I think everyone could agree upon, right? We're all sinners, absolutely. We're all in need of a savior, every single one of us. Now, postmodernism and hyper-progressivism has failed. That's clear. It's failed. Look at Gen Z. Gen Z is the perfect example to demonstrate how it's failed. It's failed them. It's set them up for failure. It's taken away things from them. Right. And now modesty and humility. Modesty and humility is important, because that's another thing I see with these types that we see in the Grammys and all of these very famous hyper-progressive people that want to push this culture on the youth. They lack modesty and humility. In fact, it's the opposite. Normative narcissism, right? This idea of show out and just let it all hang out and do the most, and who cares what people think? You're being your true self. It's your truth, etc. This is narcissism, because it's not considering how it affects others. Like Kanye walking around with this naked woman. Don't you realize that there's children around? See, it's a sickness. And then I use the example of like eating, right? When we think of this idea of sex, and how they would make the claim that sex is pleasure. It's about pleasure, and it just matters how you want to have it. It doesn't have any real meaning outside of transactional pleasure, because this is the view. This is the view. Yeah, me. I would argue no. In fact, sex does have certain meanings and purposes, not just reproduction, even though that's its foundation. I think it's also related to a bonding mechanism in marriage, right? It's a bonding mechanism. So it should be addressed as such. It shouldn't be squandered and just utilized like a tool, because I think that's unhealthy. I think it creates all types of spiritual and emotional issues and identity issues as well. That's why I think when we notice, or when we come across people that are highly sexual or hypersexual or very promiscuous, they tend to have emotional problems. They tend to have experienced some type of trauma in their childhood. They tend to be searching for something through other people's bodies or their own. There tends to be some problem there, right? Intimacy and bonding, absolutely. Now, this idea of sex is it's a crucial human behavior. It's not just like, getting a massage. It's not like buying a pair of shoes. It's not like these things. It's a very crucial part of human experience. It brings human beings into the world. It creates life, right? Sex creates life. I mean, what in our human sense, what's bigger than that? Materially, what is bigger than creating life? Not much. Right? So no, it's a big deal. Not only that, but it also bonds us in ways that, transcend pure feeling. It's emotional, it's metaphysic. There's a metaphysical bonding thing that happens. So to just completely disrespect that, I think, is insane. But again, this is why we are in the position we're in many ways, because of the sexual revolution of the 60s that pretty much got us here. Now, it isn't like it was new, of course. We've talked about the Dionysian sex cults because they were doing the same thing, right? We know Sodom and Gomorrah, they was getting it in even worse, all right? So, again, nothing new under the sun. But yes, sex, I'll compare it to eating, though it's more important than eating for sure. It's one of these, like, key life force features that we all have. We all have to sleep. We all have to eat. We all have to reproduce. It isn't to say we all have to have sex, but we have to reproduce. Maybe not every single one of us. So I compare it, and maybe this isn't the best comparison, but I look at it like, okay, someone says there's nothing wrong with having this particular type of sex. Let's just say it's one of the alternative types. I think it's probably a little more off-putting with men, the male alternative sexual experience. The male alternative sexual intercourse is probably more gross than the female version of that, just based on some of the bodily fluids that are involved. But if we were to consider that, and someone would say, well, this is just how we like to do it. And I would say, well, that's gross. I think that's disgusting. It's gross because of, the pee-pee doesn't go in the poo-poo. That's just not how we were designed. And then I know that's a very basic argument, but then we could go further and be like, well, do you eat poop? Don't you think that's gross? What if someone said, oh, well, I like to eat poop. And I want to eat poop in front of your children. I want to tell your children about eating poop. Because I like eating poop, and eating poop is good to me. And I want to be able to express myself and my love for eating poop and teach your child about that. And I'm over here like, well, I don't want my child to learn at all. I don't even want my child to consider the idea, for one. But two, I couldn't even imagine my child having to contemplate on the legitimacy of putting their poop in their mouth. It's absolutely disgusting. So no, I'm sorry. As a parent, I don't feel comfortable with that. Like, now that's fine. If you like doing that, it's weird and it's gross. Objectively, I would add. And hell no, you're not going to be able to speak to my child about such things. Absolutely not. Now, let's look at the situation we're in with these certain queer communities wanting to educate children on having this type of abnormal sexual experience that requires feces. That, in many cases, guarantees you some type of bacterial infection. So not only is it just gross, but there's a health issue. Eating poop will probably make you sick too. I'm making an absurd argument here. I'm trying to get down to the absurdity of this stuff, right? It's just so absurd that I don't care what you like about it. How could you make a political argument for something so disgusting and absurd, something that most people could never agree with, right? So no, Never would I allow anyone to teach my child about eating poop, even if a whole community likes eating poop because it's their freedom, you know. They're expressing themselves, you know. It can kill you, absolutely it can. When we get into the bacteria and all that. I identify as a poop eater. That's offensive. So it's just very easy to argue against, I think. Just at some very basic biological and psychological levels. And of course, I found it all in a spiritual thing. I think spiritually this separates you from God. Now, listen, there's a difference between, I want to say this here. Some people can't help their sexual orientation. I understand that. By the way, I have 2 loved ones that would be part of this community, okay, that I love very much. I don't necessarily agree with certain ways that they see things, sure, but that doesn't change my relationship with them. And by the way, these ideas that we're talking about here, say their orientation or their sexual interests, aren't like, they don't come up. They're not like projected out. They're not, you know, they're not we don't discuss these things at the dinner table or, you know, at the family parties or something. They kind of keep it to themselves. And I think that's how it should be if we're going to consider objective normalcy, especially with children involved. Children shouldn't be exposed to these types of mature ideas. And what I really don't like is how certain people in these communities narcissistically put their desires and needs to be accepted and to be approved. They put these needs over the needs of children. That bothers me, right? So it's like, I don't care how you choose to live your life. I don't care who you're attracted to, right? But there's a certain line, there's a barrier, a boundary we should respect. And I think that boundary has to do with protecting young children's minds and their ability to form healthy concepts and an ontology of what's real, what life is, and how things work. If we bombard them ontologically with all of this crazy postmodern stuff that makes no sense, imagine what type of person they're going to grow into. A very confused person. And possibly that's the goal. So that's basically my thing. Let's you know, do what you want to do. Let's just not involve children with this stuff. If children are around, zip it. I don't want to see it either. I don't want a child seeing this type of stuff either because it's confusing. It's confusing to a young child to see people of the same sex, say, kissing. Put your narcissistic needs of approval behind. Just put it out of the window. And let's put these kids first and let's raise normal children as they develop. By design, we are heterosexual. This is by design. This is a natural thing. It is my view that non-heterosexual, if we're going to use that term, is unnatural. And I'm not saying that, you know, we don't got to get, because that could get touchy, because I have my own views on that. I could get touchy. But the point is, I do make a naturalist argument that I think is important when we consider children. And those in my life that are not heterosexual are feel the same way. And that's cool. That's cool. I love that. Because I think that's how it should be for the sake of the children. Now, so we did the eating and sex thing. So basically there's massive consequences if enculturated wrong, right? So if we enculturate eating wrong, if we enculturate to children that it's okay to eat poop, for instance, we're growing up, or should I say our children are growing up. They're, 5 years old, 4 years old, and we're at a park, and they see a young couple, and they're literally eating poop, and the child's like, "Oh, Dad, Why are they eating poop? She could smell it. He could smell it. They could smell it. However many kids you got. What? Why are they eating poop? And you know what? Politically, I would be I guess expected to say, well, people can eat what they want. Some people like to eat tomatoes. Some people like to eat poop. That's what I would be politically expected to say. Hail to the no. Right? The first thing I'm gonna say is this. I don't know what's wrong with these people. They probably need to be in a hospital. There's something seriously wrong with them. Right? This is wrong. So it depends. Like, enculturating children is important, and if we don't do it the right way, there can be serious problems. Imagine if you raise the child the other way and say, well, people eat what they want to eat. It's okay, and then you come home and your child's trying to eat their poop. Maybe not right away, maybe later in life, who knows? The point is, you can't open that door. There has to be normalcy. There has to be boundaries, man. There has to be limits. You just can't do whatever you want. You just can't stick your penis wherever you want it to go. It doesn't work that way. That's not how to raise a healthy person. I get it. Some people have unhealthy and weird and perverted practices in their life. Do you? But listen, this kind of stuff should not ever be around children, ever. So it's massive consequences if you enculturate things wrong. So just like I'm not going to tell my child it's okay to eat poop, I'm not going to tell my child it's okay for men to have sexual intercourse, because it ain't much different. It's just a matter of anatomy. Now, let me say this. I didn't get to say this earlier. I was going to mention it. There's a difference between emotional intercourse and physical intercourse. As I started earlier saying, some people can't help who they're attracted to. I understand how that works. I have people in my family that struggle with that. Now, this is the thing. If I understand you can't help the attraction, but that doesn't mean you have to actually go forward and do it either. Right? Now, I know people in the world that don't go forward and do it because they know it's wrong. They know it is counterproductive to their health. And then there's those in the world that just say, screw all y'all, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. And I understand that too. I get it. Yeah, sin is sin. Very true. Very, very true. Sin is sin. Let's not get it twisted now. I'm not trying to make any special arrangements. Now, some might just have emotional relationships with the same sex. Now, listen, we're not going to dig into all those metaphysics, but I think as long as those things aren't shared with children, like everything else, do what you got to do. But I think the physical aspect of it is troubling. I think for all parties involved. And it's a tough thing. It's a hard thing to have these types of attractions and, not know what to do in that case. I don't, well, it's tough, man. It's tough. Anyhow, so I'm breaking these things down because as I watch the Grammys and I see this push on the youth because every single performer up there was of this community. Every single one of them had this message that, you could be whoever you want, you could be whatever you want, and you could do whatever you want. And it had a heavy sexual innuendo. I think that is extremely unhealthy. So what I'm basically doing is coming with an argument against it that I think is rooted in logic. I think it's objective, and I think it's healthy for a society. Now, the point is, these people don't care about the society. These people don't care about the children. As I said earlier, they're so narcissistic that, and they have these needs, these emotional desires to be accepted and approved of, that they put those needs over the needs of children. Now, there's basically 3 levels of purpose in life. Well, 4. The first level we could say is the ego, the individual level of purpose, where you're trying to find your purpose and express yourself and experience the world for yourself. Then the second would be, purpose with others, right? Like, what's our purpose together? What brings us together? And then there's a purpose that transcends yourself and all the people. There's something that transcends that, something bigger than us all. And then above all that, of course, would be God's will. So what it looks like to me is these people, they're stuck in that first level, man, pretending they're in the second level, right? Because they talk about it's about us together. But really, they hate anyone that doesn't believe what they believe. They hate Christians, right? In many cases, they hate men. So they feign this second level, it's about the collective, it's about the community, but really it's only their community. It's only a hive mind. So essentially they're stuck at that first level where it's just ego. It's just they have to appease their flesh and their identity. They don't care about children. They don't care about families. They don't care about other people and other people's beliefs. And of course, they have nothing transcendent. They have nothing that transcends those flesh-based, emotional, ego-based beliefs. They have none of that. So it makes sense to me why they push these messages. It's just painful to see such a massive industry utilize it as a weapon on society, hence culture creation, propaganda, all of that. Now, let's see. So it's very important who we have influencing our children. And basically what you saw on the Grammys is an example of who they want influencing our children. And then you think about influencing others to sin by showing your sexualized body, right? That's another thing. And again, you have to have a Christian understanding to know the importance of that. But all of these people out here are just helping other people sin, which is damaging and dangerous. Now, let's see. Also this idea of witches, right? And I think this goes with the hypersexualized promiscuous types too, that want to live their life through their genitals, because they're kind of the same. They're all playing in a type of witchcraft, a type of spiritism. So when I think of these witches, man, and there's a reason why these witches are also hypersexual or confused sexually, because there's always this sexual component to witchcraft. Every single witch, any type of occult school, there's always this sexual component. When you look into Crowleyism and all of this stuff, there's always sex magic, degrees of it. There's always sadomasochism. There's always this darkness, pain and pleasure and blood. And there's just always this element of this stuff. I mean, look at how they dress. Look at how they make themselves look. They genuinely look scary. And everything is over the top. Everything is extreme. I mean, look at this. This is straight up like transvestite. And that's the thing. This is transvestite makeup, by the way. No woman does her makeup this way, or unless you're a transvestite or a clown. Okay, this is always very extreme. And then she got these creepy long nails. Like, this is not. And again, it's to shock, right? It's to shock. It's to be extreme. There's always this element of extreme, going too far, further than you actually should be going. So I look at this like, hold on a second. They feel disempowered. There's this like inherent feeling of being disempowered and insecure. And I think this comes with this type of confusion. When people are confused in these different ways, they usually are, I guess, results of abuse, of course. So there's like basically they feel disempowered by a big scary world, right? So there's insecurity, there's vulnerability. They're intimidated by the world's order and by the world's cohesion of its people, of others. So the idea of normalcy is order, and that's intimidating to someone in disorder. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Right? And I also notice with these types, they tend to be very emotionally immature, quick to anger, right? Very quick to anger, very self-centered, and very black and white thinking. Their inability to see the nuance of, say, political position, their inability to see the nuance of, say, personal values or objective values, say the concept of religion. They see it as something evil. They see it as something abusive. So the patriarchy as a concept, for instance, though these systems have been abused, patriarchy, religion, of course, the systems are abused by man. It doesn't mean that the concepts, say the faith as an example, are what's wrong. It's the misuse of them by flawed men, right? But the inability to understand the nuance in that, I think, is it describes the immaturity, right? So I see this with this community pretty heavily. And also I think about the idea of magic, right? Now you'll tend to see these types are super new age. They usually hate Christianity, and they go into some type of new age magic, some way to see the future, right? Some way to pierce through the veil, right? Whether it be, some type of voodoo or, astrology, all of these different things where they want to get some type of power, a superpower. And I find this interesting. And for me, people who seek power inherently have something wrong with them. I think it is, and again, it's debatable, but I believe anyone who wants power feels powerless. Now, of course, I can make a scriptural and a spiritual argument there, because we have power in Christ. We're more than conquerors. I can make all of these arguments, but I understand the secular type wouldn't understand that. But from a secular position, I guess I could look at it like they feel disempowered in the world. So they seek some type of control mechanism. Now, there's not only magic, there's other ways. There's psychology and all types of mind games people be getting into. A good example of this is like, what is it, the PUA, pickup artists and all of that stuff. That's another one of these angles where the powerless want to feel empowered by finding ways to manipulate. So I noticed with a lot of these types, they tend to go towards magic. They tend to go towards these dark arts and these schools of misrepresentation and manipulation, hiding behind screens, hiding behind avatars, hiding behind different rituals and spells. So I look at it as like they're disempowered by a big, scary world, and they're insecure and vulnerable to it. And it's intimidating the world how big and diverse it is. And also just the cohesion of order where there tends to be a normalcy. Everyone tends to be heterosexual. There tends to be this moral objective that comes from somewhere. And that's threatening to someone who doesn't see things that way. Now, again, people are different. People might have different beliefs. They might have different moral beliefs. They might have different desires for whatever reason. That just doesn't change the fact that objectivity exists. That doesn't change the fact that normalcy exists. So it's unfortunate that this type of person would want to change the world for their own needs, would want to deconstruct obvious objective morals and lineages and histories and legacies and traditions for their own egotistic desires. That's mind-blowing to me. But again, when we get back to the root of it, the flesh, the ego, right? The personal desire, the preoccupation with self-worship and needs of that self. It makes sense because those needs supersede the world. They want to change the world. That's all that matters to them. They want to change the world for their desires because it's painful to accept the fact that they're an outlier, that maybe they are looked at differently, maybe they are looked down on, right? They can't deal with it. Yeah, they're trying to make this next generation naturally witches. Faith, I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate that speaking easy. Yeah, I watch these videos all the time, man. When I'm studying and reading, I'm always looking at like something like this. It's just soothing to me. The walks, the drives, and stuff, just the scenery. I feel like I'm going somewhere. It's cool. I love it. So yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, leaving a breadcrumb trail of gayness. We are the world indoctrination. That's a good one. Yeah. So yeah, it's this disempowerment, intimidated by the world and order and cohesion of others. It's this outsider syndrome where they all, and queer is a perfect term for it, right? It's like this outsider syndrome. Now, again, I understand people are different. I'm not trying to say there should be no body that is, this way, because that wouldn't be honest about what the world is. The world is defined by difference and diversity. But that doesn't change the fact that there won't be levels of majority and minority and levels of inequality and pain and suffering. These are all parts of the world. So for me, it's annoying to see people that want to change those things. Now, of course, you want to mitigate them. I'm not saying slavery should exist. We want to mitigate some of the pain and some of the suffering. But I think that has to be within reason, right? Taking something that is clearly detrimental to an overall society and projecting that on to its youngest growing generation is sick. It's sociocide. And that's what we're seeing with all of this progressivism. And I think that's why it's culturally changing, at least in some senses. So it's this outsider syndrome, and they dream of secret powers. That's why a lot of them get involved with magic, because it's cowardice, is my point. Magic is cowardice. And then you think of children's stories. I've been seeing this for so long. Look at young children's stories, especially for girls, cartoons. I'm talking about, let's go all the way back. Let's Care Bears? What is it? My Little Pony? Let's go back. What do you find in all of these cartoons and all of these themes, Disney, everything? Magic. Magic powers. Now we understand there's an occult history here, but I'm trying to dig into some of the depths of maybe some of the motivations behind it. It's Luciferian, right? God, or Lucifer wants to usurp God. Lucifer wants to be God. It's this searching for magical powers out of insecurity, right? Lucifer was insecure. He hated himself because he couldn't be the Most High. So for me, magic is about working in the shadows. Magic is about manipulating nature. That's the best way to define magic, is the control or manipulation of nature. Guess what else is defined the same way? Technology. And we understand technology in many cases is hard to differentiate from magic. Arthur C. Clarke said it best. Will to power, yeah, absolutely. Now, yeah, children's stories, especially for little girls. Why is it always about getting magical powers and controlling things from the shadows? And when I think of magic, right, and the season of the witch and the occult and the hidden, it's always the outsider, right? Let's even think about The witch trials, right? They're a persecuted class, right? This is why they identify with Salem witch trials, people of the queer community. That's why they identify with a lot of this witchcraft, because, you know, they were the outsiders, the outliers, the outcasts of a Christian world, right? And they identify with that. They identify with that. And so it's this shared identification with a persecuted class. So in that class of vulnerability, and I would argue this, magic lacks faith. Magic lacks faith. It's faithless, because what magic and the use of it does is it makes you the controller of your destiny. It makes you the controller and the wielder of the metaphysical. You become God. Now, magic, secrets, in my view, are the ability to manipulate nature and others. Right? When we think of secrets and lies, they just separate us. And it's cowardly to have to manipulate instead of communicating or inspiring at the human level. And what I mean by at the human level is dealing with people face to face, eye to eye, man, woman, man to man, woman to woman, woman to man, etc. It's cowardice to avoid that and work in the shadows and utilize technologies and utilize spirits and incantations to inspire, influence, or affect or impact others. In my view, that represents a type of cowardly behavior. And this is at least an aspect of why I believe God detests witchcraft and detests magic in this type of use. It's passive magic. It isn't assertive. It's a false sense of assertion, or should I say, it's a false sense of assertiveness or of being assertive. You're asserting your will on the world, but it's not real. You're hiding and you're utilizing secret, hidden, occult things that other people aren't aware of. It's a gnosis. It's a special knowledge that gives you a false sense of power, a false sense of strength, a false sense of self-value. In my personal view, it's passive. It is not assertive. It's hiding. Hence occult, hidden. Hence Gnosticism, secret knowledge. It's gatekeeping out of fear. Because if everyone had this secret knowledge, it wouldn't be secret anymore, would it? It wouldn't be secret anymore, would it? What happens when it's no longer secret? It loses its power. If everybody can do magic, there is no magic. Hence, that magic should not exist. We should all operate in the world authentically. We should all operate in the world openly in this sense, not hiding, manipulating aspects of nature and metaphysics behind the scene. Now, I know everyone's not going to agree with this, especially those who might dabble in the New Age. That's fine. That doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the fact. It's cowardly to have to manipulate instead of communicating and inspiring at the human level with one's own integrity, one's own dignity, one's own charisma, power of love, as an example, right? Influencing and inspiring others in the world around you in an authentic way that doesn't require hidden things, secret things, manipulation of things. in this sense, because we manipulate everything. Pouring a glass of water into a glass is manipulating technology. You get the point. Magic is who we are. I mean, then we get into the definition of magic. Maybe we have different definitions of magic. I'm sticking to the traditional definition of magic. Now, and I'm also making a moral argument here. You have to ground your moral argument. Many people who practice in magic don't have the same grounding for their morals as I do. So, of course, we would see things differently. In my view, magic, in this sense, is a power of lies. It's not real power. It's deception, it's treachery, it's betrayal, and it's ultimately faithlessness. And it can turn into a type of Prometheanism or a Promethean narcissism. And I think that's what we see with a lot of these witches in Hollywood and in the media entertainment industry, etc. And I think it's rooted in this disempowered feeling and in this scary world that one can't wield, or should I say influence or impact on their own. So they need special reinforcements. Yeah, divination. Yeah, absolutely. And even the terms, they make sense. Hidden, occult, Gnostic, secret. Things that are hidden, things that are secret, are hidden and secret for a reason. And those reasons tend to not be of God, or at least not of the good. Right? And I think this is plain and simple. It is a magical world. It surely is. Our world is surrounded by it. The world is, in a sense, propped up by it. This, we understand who's the king of this earth and the prince of the air, right? Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So overall, when we see these dancers and all of this, it's, for me, it's disrespectful to women, it's disrespectful to mothers, and it's disrespectful to children. It's counterproductive to a healthy society. It confuses and discombobulates our understanding of how to be as far as men, women, youth, etc. It breaks binaries and boundaries that are required to be healthy. It makes it literally impossible to form any complete and consistent ontology. And then at that point, we just get, I guess, psychosis. And if everybody ran around, and let me say this, if everybody ran around looking like this, if everybody ran around looking like this and thinking like this world wouldn't last a month. There's a reason why these types of people are a microcosmic portion of society, because otherwise society would not function. Now, that alone should give people pause, considering the projection and the enculturation of this way of thinking, of this worldview. It isn't to say they shouldn't exist. Of course, this is the world. There's going to be all types of things and beliefs and people, etc. But there has to be hierarchy for order, of course, but there has to be balance. There has to be balance. So knowing that, it makes everything seem, everything makes a lot more sense, I think. And then, let's see. Yeah, I don't have to go into all that. I got a bunch of notes here that I could riff off of, but those are my main points I really wanted to get to. Women and children, okay, as the forefront of a healthy society, and describing how what we're seeing, and the Grammys are just a good example to see how lawless and satanic the world is from a cultural perspective. As a cultural expression, the Grammys are a great example of how satanic and lawless the world is. Just gives any especially a Christian a good platform to describe what's going on. So that led me to consider, okay, what do we need to combat this type of stuff? Thank God it is still a small portion of the society, though it's presented on such a big stage. It seems like everyone's like this, but they're not. Unless you're maybe in a handful of cities in the United States, you don't ever see people like this. Let's be real. You don't see people like this. This is a lie. This is magic. They're misrepresenting reality in front of all of our eyes. And they want us to believe a delusion by showing us illusions. Now, women and children at the forefront of society and culture. And of course, this has to be guided by men of God, I would argue. Otherwise, it's just men of the flesh. And we see how that's been working. And again, these are ideal. Okay, I'm just trying to set some what I believe are good rules and boundaries and forms of order to combat some of this stuff. Just for posterity. It isn't to say any of this stuff is actually or could even happen. And then arguments for cultural normalcy. Let's get back to that. And I think we are. And I think that's an interesting part of this big conservative movement right now is people are trying to get back to normalcy as the pendulum shift away from this crazy crap we've been seeing. And then, of course, modesty and humility. They lack modesty and humility. Constantly wanting to show their body parts, constantly wanting to push their own sexual perversions on other people that might not share any of these same views. And it's inherently antisocial. I want to say that too. This view, this hyper-individualist progressive view of I'm going to do whatever I want to do as long as it's quote unquote not harming anyone. Well, there's a certain thing called psychological and spiritual harm. You're harming people just by presenting some of these concepts, by showing some of these things to people, you're harming them. That's antisocial. And I know that might be an extreme position, but I truly believe this culture, this movement, if it becomes too popular, could really damage society. And we already see it happening. So it is inherently antisocial. Right? That's something to always consider. It's not about community. It's not about society. It isn't about family. It's not about humanity. It is about the flesh. It is solely about the ego. And I believe it is just a facet of narcissism. And I've been saying this for years, and I know it's nuanced, but these extreme examples, these people we're seeing on these stages, they are just purely narcissistic demons, in my view, pushing their own problems, their own issues, their own toxic behavioral patterns and belief systems on the world. And thankfully, more people are standing up and saying something about it. Thankfully, we are seeing some change at some level. But we got work to do, guys. We got work to do. So thank you for being with me for another episode of the Wake Up Show. I've been meaning to get some of these ideas out, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. And I will see you guys next week. All right. With a whole new week of Wake Up Show episodes. So I appreciate you all. I love you all. I thank you for being with me. Shout out to the mods, all those in the chat. Appreciate you guys. If you've enjoyed yourself, we are value for value. Please tip your server as you would in any other establishment. And I know that probably only applies to Americans, right? Because I know in Europe, they don't even have tipping. In Japan as well. So I would appreciate it, though, regardless of where you're at. All right, guys, I'm going to get myself out of here. Peace and blessings to you all. See you soon.
Please do not forget to tip your server. Check out the merch shop for fire gear, links in the description. We appreciate your continued support. All praises to the Most High. We appreciate your continued support.